So now we want to talk a little bit more about kind of the admissions process, what we're looking for, tips on entering experience, letters of recommendation, all of that kind of stuff. So, and Brooke, this gets to your question here about the next steps after you submit your application. So we'll kind of cover that as well. And away we go. So you hit submit on your application, your VMCAS application, your supplemental application, and then that signature page and fee have been sent. So you're all in. All of your information is all in. At that time, I shouldn't say at that time, but VMCAS will begin that professional transcript entry. If you have paid for that and requested that, they will do that once all of your transcripts have been received. So once you're, yes.
Just so they know, they do not have to have their VMCAS application submitted in order to have the professional transcript entry done.
Perfect. So that professional transcript entry can be going on while you're filling out other parts of the application, right?
Yep.
Okay. So after everything's submitted, that professional transcript entry is done. Then we, the VMCAS starts a verification process, which essentially means that once all transcripts have been received, they are going to look at that transcript along with what you entered, make sure that they're an exact match. That's why Kathy said, you know, as long as you're putting in those classes as an exact match for your transcripts, you'll be okay. So they will do that. And then once that is done, then we can review that. We go through the academic process academic review process once that is done. So kind of this is a good way. This is taken from AAVMC and the presentations that Diana Dabdoob has been doing for applicants kind of nationwide. So this is kind of what your application, the kind of steps that your application goes through there. So you can kind of see that. You can take a screenshot of it if you would like to, all of that kind of stuff. So we will, this can happen. It needs to be completed, right, Kathy, by 11:59 on September 15th.
Right. Everything has to be completed by the deadline because they don't accept things after the deadline. So if you didn't get a letter of evaluation in, then that letter is not going to get in. So everything has to be into VMCAS by 11:59 Eastern time on the 15th of September.
Yep. However, you can submit your VMCAS application early. You can submit it with transcripts still pending and letters of recommendation still pending. So you can submit while those two things are still rolling in. That's okay. But all of those things need to be received then by 11:59 on September 15th. So then once they are verified, we go through and we start our review process. That's kind of the next step after they've been verified. So you may be verified, if you submit your application early, you may be verified by September 1st, maybe, or, you know.
We have verified applications now.
Okay, so
anytime.
Yes, yeah. And so that doesn't mean though that you get extra bonus points for being the early bird. Essentially it means the reason we encourage students to apply maybe a couple weeks early is that if there is a problem with your transcripts or with, you know, something that Iowa State has a question on, you have some time to kind of fix that and communicate with VMCAS, with your registrar, with us. So, you know, you can get kind of some problems fixed if there are any. So that would be the benefit of applying a little early and not waiting till the deadline. I will say that we've had a lot of students who say that VMCAS gets a little funky that last day because everybody's trying to submit it at the very last minute. I will say if vet school was my dream and I knew my dream hinged on this application, as much of a procrastinator as I am, I would be like, my due date, I would push my due date up a week or two, you know, and be like, okay, the drop date for me is September 1st. Everybody else can wait till September 15th, but I'm going to go on September 1st, knowing that because I am a procrastinator, if it's the 2nd or 3rd, I'm still okay. But that would be my advice to you, is that it's never going to hurt you to apply just a little early. So, there's that. There's my PSA. So after your application has been reviewed, or I mean, after your application has been verified, we will start an academic review. And so that's your first kind of 50% of your application. And then the committee review is the second 50% of your application. And we'll go through what both of those mean as well. I know that there was a question about the GRE in here somewhere, and I'm missing it. Nicole, here it is. So we no longer require the GRE. We haven't for about 3, I think, years now. So COVID has not impacted our GRE requirement because we kind of took that off the table a few years ago. I know some students who take the GRE for other veterinary schools that they're applying to. They may enter in their grades or their scores in VMCAS. We do not take that into consideration. So the GRE isn't required. It's not evaluated anymore. We simply look at the last 45 credits and our required Science GPA. So we do look at your cumulative undergraduate GPA, only because Iowa code says that you have to have a 2.5 minimum undergraduate GPA to apply, or to be admitted, I think it is, right, Kathy, or something?
No, to apply. They have to have a 2.5, yeah.
Perfect. So after we look at that, you know, cum GPA, we see it's above a 2.5. We don't consider it. It's not like part of a score or anything like that. It's just a like check mark, essentially.
I'd like to say one thing at this point. We do not, the GPAs that you see that VMCAS has, we do not use. VMCAS, when they calculate their GPAs, will use all courses that fit into a category, whether they're repeated or not. So when you see something that comes up, the cum GPA is VMCAS's calculations. It will not be our calculations. If we see a GPA that's below a 2.5, we recalculate it only because we use the second grade you received if you repeat a course. VMCAS does not, so their GPAs can be much lower than what we would calculate it, particularly if somebody's taken some time off, decides they want to go back and is retaking a lot of coursework. That can make a big difference in what their cum GPA is. So that's why I just want everybody to know that we do not use the VMCAS calculated GPAs.
That's good to know. Perfect. I'm just going back one half step. I see this question from Jessica, and I think it's a good one. So just to clarify, in order for her question says, I may have missed this, but in order for professional transcript entry to start and be done before 9:15, I have to submit my entire VMCAS to 4 universities for it to start. No, I'm sorry. I think that was unclear when I said it. I was mixed up about it. You can do, and it's maybe on the wrong bullet point on our slide, but as soon as they have all of your transcripts, they will start that transcript entry. The professional transcript entry, if you have requested and paid for it. So they'll start that as soon as they have all of your transcripts. So you do not have to submit your VMCAS application. Great. Okay, so let's talk just a little bit about the required science GPA. You kind of talked about that, Kathy, that we would take the most recent grade. Yeah. So these are the prerequisite science courses for Iowa State. So currently they are 2 semesters of general biology, 2 semesters of general chemistry, organic chemistry 1, anatomy and or physiology, physics, biochemistry, genetics. Did I miss anything?
Nope, you got them.
I think, okay, phew, I got them. So those courses are what we are going to calculate for that required science GPA. Obviously, if you are have some of those still pending, or if you took them in the winter, spring, summer of 2020, and you took it as a pass-fail course, those would not be considered in your, we will accept those courses. Obviously, if you took them pass-fail, they won't calculate into that GPA. So that would be something to think about. If you have planned courses, or because of COVID, you took something pass-fail, that, will alter, that GPA, or won't be considered in the GPA. But there are science prereqs versus the science courses you're taking for your, animal science, biology, chemistry, whatever sort of degree that you're getting, those requirements. So that we do set a GPA cutoff for, is sort of the first kind of stopgap for our students or for our applicants. That has ranged anywhere from a 2.5 to last year it was a 3.0. It fluctuates each year based on the number of applications we get and essentially the quality of applications we get, right? Or the quality of academic scores that they have. So keep your eye on that. Like I said, it fluctuates every year. And unfortunately, we don't really know. There's no way to predict what that's going to be. We have no way of knowing until all of those required science course GPAs have been calculated. So we also, the other component we look at is the last 45 credits. We do not split terms though. So if you hit 45 credits in the middle of a semester, we're going to take that whole, semester. And that works for undergraduate courses, but it also works, if you're in a graduate program, we would look at those didactic courses as well, right, Kathy?
Right, that we wouldn't look at like thesis or research or seminar courses. It's basically your classroom lecture type courses that are considered for your graduate.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So, okay. So Caitlin asks, what is considered last 45 GPA since most fall 2020 and spring 2021 courses have not been taken? You're right. So we're looking at the last 45 credits from the time you apply, back 45-ish credits. However, you will also send Iowa State an updated transcript after fall of 2020. After you have those grades for fall of 2020, you will send an official copy of your transcripts to us. And that, if you go to that same Iowa State, vetmed.iastate.edu, you know, find the apply page, the information for transcripts is there. It's also it will also be posted on the message board, right, Kathy?
Right. The status page, your status page at the bottom has links to dates and deadlines, and it talks about when the fall transcripts are due, and it has the where you need to send it there.
Yeah.
So you can get that straight from the status.
Yeah. So we'll essentially recalculate both the required science course GPA and the last 45 credit GPA to include fall of 2020. So we do that before we make our final decision. So if you get senioritis, wait till your spring semester. Don't, you know, kind of keep focused in that fall semester. So, perfect. Okay, great.
Just one thing to keep in mind. We don't consider anything that hasn't happened yet. So if you haven't taken a course yet, it's not going to be looked at because we don't have a grade for it. If you haven't taken an experience yet, it doesn't matter whether you have it planned or not. They don't take into consideration things that you haven't done yet. So that's one thing. And I want to repeat that we are currently accepting pass-fail grades only for winter, spring, and summer of 2020. If you're taking courses this fall, even if your school is going online like many are, we still need an actual grade for the course. We will not accept pass, not pass courses. Thank you.
Great. So those evaluating those compared to letter grades. So
you will have met the requirement. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any difference. We don't weight them more or less. We look at it as if you've met the requirement. We just don't calculate a grade because we have none for it. So there's no weighting. You know, like say, oh well, this person took 3 pass, not pass. We're not even looking at that. That is just looked at as if you've completed the requirement, just like if you tested out of it. Mm-hmm. So that's not a problem.
Yeah. And so for us, our academic review is very objective. Like Kathy said, we're not weighting things. We're not, you know, saying like, oh, it took them, you know, 3 times to get a B in organic chemistry, like it would probably take me 4 or 5 times. You know, so we're not looking at that where it's an objective, you've met the science requirements or you plan to, here's your GPA for those required sciences. Okay, here's the last 45 credits. It's very objective for that.
Our admissions committee will not see any of your academic information. They will not look at your transcripts. That is all done in our office. So all they will see is a composite score for your science GPA and your last 45 GPA, and that will only be after they have already reviewed your application. So they don't see any of that, so they won't know whether or not, you know, you repeated organic chem 3 times. It doesn't make any difference. Some schools aren't that way, but it's strictly objective. We calculate and we check off that you've met the requirement.
Yeah. Okay, Lauren has a question. Sorry, I got a piece of ice. Lauren has a question. I will be taking courses from a school that is on a quarter system. Do I send the transcripts after the fall semester that ends in, or the fall, I think you mean quarter that ends in December, or after the winter quarter that ends in March?
It would be the December. That's why we say we're taking credit or non-pass, not pass from winter, spring, and summer. it's because quarter systems, the winter's too late. We will have made decisions by that time. So we only need it from your fall quarter.
Okay. Great. Okay, great. I think the rest of the questions are more on experience and letters of rec and all of that kind of stuff, essays. So we'll kind of head on to our committee review. So in our committee review, which is the other 50% of your score, so after the academic review is done, those students above that required science GPA cutoff will their applications will head to our committee review. Like Kathy said, they are not looking at your, or will not see your GPA. They are specifically looking at life essentially outside of well, I don't even want to say outside of the classroom, because some people are TAs and that gets that gets taken into consideration. So they're looking at everything else on your application. Let's put it that way. So we'll kind of break down each one of these sections here. But that's kind of what the committee review encompasses. So let's tackle experience. We're ready for it, right? Okay, so again, I'm going to credit AAVMC for this flow chart here that kind of helps us understand what we're looking, or kind of how to look at experience. Again, go ahead and screenshot this. I will send this out to you afterwards as well. Send the presentation out afterwards as well, so you can have access to the infographics and stuff like that. So again, taken from AAVMC and Diana's presentations there. So essentially, when you look at your research, here are kind of the questions that you can answer to determine what might fit best in employment experience, animal experience, veterinary experience, and research experience. One of the things that, I think Kathy has talked about before too, is that I think a lot of people get hung up on like the type of experience, right? Well, I did research, but it was also with a veterinarian, and then, it was on animals. So where do I put that? The admissions committee will read your experiences. So they will kind of get that, they'll get to see a picture of it, put it in the category which you believe it best fits in. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They will see all your experiences. Yep. So it's not a big deal if it gets in the wrong category.
Mm-hmm. With that though, let's talk a little bit about work experience. So our admissions committee does like to see some work experience. Now you may have all of your work experience might also be listed in veterinary experience, because you got paid as a vet tech, a vet assistant, any, intern, whatever it is. Just put a little entry that, is like 0 hours or whatever, that just says, like, hey, I was employed by a veterinary clinic, so that our admissions committee can see, okay, yes, if I'm looking for work experience, I'm going to find it under vet experience. I think some students get kind of narrowed into this line of thinking that's like, if it doesn't have to do with veterinarians or veterinary medicine or animals, admissions committees don't want to know about it. That is not true at all. If you work in food service or retail or, grocery stores or in an office or whatever, let us know about that work. So, probably what you've learned from your veterinary experience is that yes, it is a profession that is focused around animals, but there is also a heck of a lot of person-to-person communication and work that you have to do as well. So being able to, show that, hey, I've done a lot of work with other people, is an asset as well. So keep that in mind, definitely. So let's look at, hopefully that helped there. Okay, let's look at animal veterinary research experience because we have a lot of questions on that. So you can kind of see our guidelines here. I'm going to leave them. Well, I guess I should make mention of them a little bit, and then we're just going to dive into the Q&A box because half of them are about, half of your questions are about experience. We want to get to those. Excuse me. So one thing to think about is that, if you were, maybe you worked at a mixed animal clinic, half the time you got to go out in the field and make, do farm calls and stuff like that. The other half the time you were in an exam room, working with small animals. Put that as one entry. Even though you were doing multiple things, use that paragraph, that description to do that. Also, if you did, if you were able to shadow or work as a vet assistant part-time and a kennel tech the other part of the time, put that as one experience. Okay, instead of kind of trying to separate those out. And then use that description to say, hey, I did this and this and this. Some veterinary schools do use pet ownership as experience. Iowa State does not. It's just, frankly, I think too hard to figure out how many hours are legitimate pet experience. So thinking about my crazy dog, I have one calm dog here and one crazy dog up there. So we do a lot of different, enrichment activities, training him, walking him, all of that kind of stuff. I'm learning about his, pet behavior or dog behavior that way. He's up in his kennel right now though. So yes, technically I'm still in charge of him, but it's not, hands-on pet or animal experience. So pet ownership is just a little bit too cloudy that our admissions committee says, you know what, there are different ways to get that animal experience. We also, some vet schools do, we do not look at animal experience gained through coursework. So if you have an animal science class, like animal science, some class where maybe you're out on the university farm, gaining kind of experience that way, it will help you as a veterinarian, right? And it will help you as, that animal scientist. But we would like you to go beyond that. And we would like you to see you kind of seeking out those experiences for yourself, versus something that's very organized and packaged in that college coursework. And then obviously, work with your veterinarian, but please do not practice veterinary medicine without a license. So you should not be telling the admissions committee that you were diagnosing, patients or ordering, treatments, medications for patients. You should always be assisting your veterinarian within the scope of that, of your role as an assistant. So, sorry, my tech guy is back. Kathy,
Yeah,
I know that there's some questions in there. Do you want to start diving into
questions? I will start up with questions. One thing that we have had when you're talking about not practicing veterinary medicine without a license, people will say, well, I spayed my own cat, or I gelded whatever if they came from a farm. That's great, but it's also illegal, and it puts it gives a bad indication of who you are, because even though I know a lot, especially people on the farm, will do, minor veterinary things because they have to. Knowing I have animals, it's very costly not to be able to do some of it yourself. However, you just have to make sure. It would be better if you said, even if in surgery, if a veterinarian, you're a tech, the veterinarian lets you close, you did it under the supervision of your veterinarian. So that is a real a problem when people say it. It puts a bad light on whoever you're working for, and also a bad light on you. Let me see.
I'm back to Kathy.
Okay. Well, I just Anthony's the first question about entering your experience.
Yeah.
It says it only allows him to enter 3. That is you should be able to enter 20 if you've had 20.
Yeah.
That's a VMCAS question. That is not correct. We don't want you. We want you to put down what you feel you've done, and so that's a VMCAS question. You will need to go to them because it's yeah, there's something wrong. You should be able to enter as many as you want.
Yep. Okay, so Megan's question, if you're struggling to find locations to gain experience in a veterinary clinic due to COVID-19, should we mention this in the explanation statement? Yes, so the explanation statement is a good place to let the admissions committee know if you have had difficulty with experience or any ways that impact or that COVID has impacted your road to vet school. So yes, I know that it's hard right now to find veterinary clinics that are willing to have more bodies in their clinic than are absolutely necessary. So definitely, let us know about that impact. Okay, so, and I know we kind of have a few different questions along these same lines. So let's tackle these. Megan, and then I'm looking a little bit further down at Nicole. So Megan asks, all of my experience hours are equine related. Is that all right, given that I want to pursue equine medicine?
That is perfectly fine. We do not say you have to have a lot of experience in different areas. However, it does give the committee a better feel if they feel that you kind of looked at the profession as a whole and you haven't just stuck with one thing. It's better if you at least try to see what's happening in areas other than equine. There are some people, in fact, I know 2 people that started out to be equine vets and that are now swine veterinarians. Their reasoning was they enjoyed horses and they didn't want their job to conflict with that. That's how they relaxed, and so they didn't want their job to be the same thing that they did when they wanted to relax. Things like that. So they want people to kind of look and see what the entire profession is, because you're going to be doing a lot with dogs and cats, whether or not that's where you're going to end up. You will be doing a lot, especially your first 2 years. That's going to be the anatomy and physiology you learn the most about. So we accept people, and if everything else is good and you have some good veterinary experience equine wise, you'd still have a very good chance of getting in. Just depending upon how everything else falls out in your application, to have a little bit more idea of a variety of what the profession is, and you can say, that you've looked at these options, just gives you a little boost.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then a follow-up to that, Nicole asks, where would you like all of us to have those experiences, large, small, exotic, or equine, or exotic or farm? I would say, like Kathy was talking about, if whatever your interest is, it's good to have a bulk of hours there. But if you're not sure, then look at multiple different parts of veterinary medicine. So essentially, what I would say a solid application looks like is a whole story, right? So you've gotten all of this experience, which informs your essays, And your essay, one of the essay questions is, what are your future career goals? So it's okay for that, you know, that future career goal to be, let's say, production animal medicine. So then the admissions committee then sees, oh, most of that experience is in production animal medicine. Okay, I got that. And then those letters of recommendation should back up your experiences, your you know, education, the qualities that you look for, or that you think veterinarians, or that you are strong. What is it? Which qualities do you possess, and which do you think, you know, are benefits to the veterinary profession? That I totally said that question wrong, but I promise it's on a future slide. Anyway, but that would be something to think about is, you know, how does my application tell a whole story? So there's not one thing that we're looking for other than, you know, if we see a student really wants to be a dairy only veterinarian. I'm thinking of one of our faculty members who started out her career as a dairy only practitioner. And all that student has is small animal experience. Probably our admissions committee is going to say, do they really know what they're getting into? So you want to kind of tell that whole story, if that makes sense. Okay, Amanda, if I've worked at as a veterinary technician in the same clinic for 2 years, does that look better or worse for my application? Do they consider that too repetitive? So I think we've kind of talked about it. The admissions committee wants that longevity. They like to see that longevity. A lot of times that means that you've increased your responsibility in that one role. They do like to see a little variety though too. So whether that's being able to work with another, you know, under another veterinarian or in a different realm of veterinary medicine, they do like to see that. But 2 years at the same clinic, I think, you know, is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They like to see people that have stayed, have gotten a job, stayed. Hopefully you've had increased responsibilities. But the other thing to think about is, you know, maybe you just want to go out and, if it's a small animal clinic, go out and ride with a veterinarian that does farm calls, or just kind of investigate. It doesn't mean you have to have tons of hours, but take a little bit of time to investigate other species. Again, we do not have any specific requirements, and I've seen lots of people with one job that have gotten in, so it doesn't count you out, but the competitiveness, at least of current applicant pools, has been quite high. So having a broad idea of what you have, you know, what you're doing, why you want to do it, and that you've looked at other aspects of the profession, so that especially people that say, well, I only want to work with small animals, or I only want to work with large animals. Well, have some experience with the animal you don't want to work with, because then you can back up why you want to stay with small animals rather than doing large animals, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. So it's important to show them that you're not just straight focused. You're going to have to know everything in order to pass your boards anyway. You're going to have to work with all animals. So show them that you've at least looked around in the profession, and that there are other things, that other species, other things you can do. It just gives your application a boost.
Great. Okay, Caitlin, not Caitlin, sorry. Mary asks, do you prefer bulleted description or a paragraph format?
That is one thing that I know that kind of comes up. It depends upon, look at how much you can fit in the description. I believe they count space as well as empty space, as well as characters, in the total amount that you can put in the description. Sometimes I think bulleted takes up too much room and you can't put everything in. So I'd look at it that way. If you can't get everything you want in, put it in paragraph form. In most cases, we see paragraph forms, so that's what leads me to believe. I have not filled out an application in this area, but that's what leads me to believe that a paragraph form gives you more room to put information in there than a bulleted form does. So it's just a matter of how much you want to put in there and how much you can fit in. It doesn't make our committee looks at a lot of paragraph descriptions, so I wouldn't be worried about using that if you wanted to.
Great. Brooke asks, in terms of experience, I've been riding horses for 15 years, but chose not to compete. I ride recreationally and broke my own mare. Is this something to include on the application or no, because she's a personal pet? So interestingly, owned animals like horses, if you are on a farm, like a family farm, or you own your own livestock, you've shown animals, all of that kind of stuff, that absolutely is animal experience. I think it's the casual kind of household pet that is not considered animal experience, but definitely, especially with your riding and your training, seems like it would
yeah, I mean, if you did 4-H, pony club, something like that, that would definitely be something to include, because those things definitely you're learning stuff other than just having a horse to ride. I would include it only because some schools use it. Our committee will probably not use it, but a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, I don't know how many, but there are schools that use pets as experience, and so I'd hate to tell you to leave something out that another school might consider. So I would go ahead and put it in.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the thing, right? If you're applying to multiple schools and you know that school A says, pet ownership is experience, put your pets down. What our admissions committee is going to do is just kind of read past that one. And it's not going to kind of give you points on your application.
Yeah.
So Bridget asks, do you think fostering dogs would go under animal experience or just volunteering? I would put it under animal experience.
Yeah, it would be animal experience, definitely, but it would also be looked at as volunteering if you're doing that for free and fostering dogs for the local shelter. You definitely, because it would be not for pay, so you say that, so it would be volunteer under that. So I'd put it under animal experience, but make sure you mark it down as non-paid.
Alexandria asks, so a research class that involves animal experience does not count as animal experience?
Again, I guess we need more information. If you're doing research and you're drawing blood on pigs every day or every week, things like that, that would be animal. I would put it under research and tell them what you're doing with the animals under the research experience. Don't put it in both places. Committees tend to get mad when they have to reread something, but I would put it under research, because research should always be considered research regardless of what else you're doing within it. But you need to put in their description is what you're doing, and it's drawing blood and that type of animal experience. I don't know what else. It might be having specific types of diets and looking at animals with different diets and certain things. But put it under research, but definitely put down what you do with the animals within that.
But what about if it's a like class?
Oh, that would
research class. Yeah.
Well, research, it depends on, I guess I'd need to talk to the person, because research, like especially in undergraduate research or graduate research, it's listed as a class, but it's kind of non-supervised necessarily. To me, research is research regarding whether or not it's a class, and you tell them what you do within the research, and that's the way our committee would look at it, would be as a research item, not not necessarily a class, because a lot of graduates in particular will have a lot of classes listed as research because that's they're working on the research project. The experience within that research project would be considered.
Okay, great. So, and I'm sorry, I think that I cleared that question out already, but if you want to send Kathy a chat directly to Kathy, or put it to either Kathy or to all panelists, if you have more details and want to ask that question, you're welcome to do that. So, okay, so looking here, animal experience with FFA. We kind of covered this, but just to clarify for Kristen, you've heard mixed reviews as to whether or not this should be included in the application under experience. Our thoughts are things like FFA, animal experience with FFA, 4-H, you know, sort of outside groups are great. As far as being in middle school and or high school, I think the more autonomous and the more directly responsible you are, the better. But if there are things in middle school that you believe are, you know, high quality, then go ahead and put them. Or if you want to say, hey, I've been in FFA since 4th grade, go ahead and put that as your start date. And then, you know, through to whenever you, you know, were no longer an FFA member, and then list all of the things in FFA that you did with that animal experience, I think would be good.
Yeah, definitely 4-H, FFA, Pony Club. There's probably other clubs out there similar that are actually teaching you things about animals. Definitely put those in. Mm-hmm. Again, high school, we usually I tell people that, you know, stuff from when you're 15, 16 on up, because in most cases, you can do things by yourself at that time. Sometimes to put experiences when you're 8 and 10, yes, you can feed animals and you can do some things, but the committee doesn't quite know whether you're actually doing them or your parents doing them, things like that. So I usually tell people to look at 15, 16, like when you get your first job. That would be about the time you should start putting things in. But like Deanna said, if you've done it since, you know, I've been doing that since 4th grade, then there's absolutely no reason not to put that down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, perfect. I am seeing your community experiences too. We'll get to those in a next slide or two. We're just kind of looking at animal experience. So let's see. Amanda asks, if I experience multiple types of experience in one position, such as small farm exotic animals, should I make 2 separate entries to fit all of this information in, or how should I go about representing this experience? Do one, and then in the description, let us know about all of the different things that you did.
And you can check more than one thing when it asks for what type of animal. You should be able to check more than one type. On the experience, it'll ask you, it has species down, I believe, or at least it used to.
Okay.
And so you can check more, but yes, descriptions where you need to put things.
Great. And so for those personal, Brooke asks a follow-up question, you know, for those personal kind of large animal things like riding, you know, horse riding, or maybe it's, you know, your own family farm, who should they put down as a supervisor? Brooke says that they've worked with several trainers over the past year, moved my horse several times. Should they list themselves?
Just list, yeah. When it's a personal thing, it's basically you're self-supervised. If you're not, if you're doing something on your own, like taking lessons and things like that, working with a trainer, you would this would just be a personal thing, so it would be yourself, or you can leave it blank too.
Mm-hmm. Margaret asks, would a biology internship in which I am interning with a vet for the fall semester for credits show that will show on my transcript count? It's not a
Yes.
class, it's a...
Right. The internships where you get an internship, I do have to say they probably don't carry as much weight as if you went out and found yourself a job or initiated the experience yourself. But definitely put it down because they do count and they will read it. The Iowa State's admissions committee likes to see people that are motivated to go out and find these experiences for themselves and not have something canned. That is also why if your parents are a vet and you've worked with your parents and nobody else, that also is not looked at favorably because they want to see you go out and do some stuff on your own. It's really easy to go and work in a family clinic. They want to see that you want this bad enough to put some effort into learning about it. So, but definitely put internships when you're out at another place. Definitely put it down.
Okay, EJ asks, I'm taking a break from my current job as a vet assistant in a small animal hospital to shadow a large animal vet for 1 month. Awesome. Would I still write down my small animal job as current as I'm going back after 1 month, or would that look like I have 2 jobs at once? I would put it, I mean, definitely list it as current, and then in the description, you can say that you, took 1 month off for this other experience. They're going to see that other month-long experience and it'll be great. Yeah, so absolutely. Put that in there, just put like that you had that 1 month hiatus. Okay, I'm a registered vet tech and have listed my schooling for this already on my application. I volunteered outside of class to assist our instructors with large animal shoot work such as vaccines, castrations, etc. Can we include this as volunteer work and activities? Absolutely. Yes, if you're assisting outside of the classroom with those instructors, with those veterinarians, absolutely. That's good.
That's making yourself available to get more experience. So that's absolutely fine.
Okay, what if a doctor has passed away throughout my experience? I'm very sorry for your loss of that mentor. That is okay. It's still a valid, veterinary experience. I understand maybe not being able to obviously have a letter of recommendation, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, so I'm very sorry about that, but that doesn't negate an experience, at all. So, okay, how about being a 4-H judge, not directly working with animals, but you're evaluating based on your knowledge related to that field? Would that go into animal experience or work experience?
I would put that under animal experience because it still is, you may not have worked with the animal to get them where they are, but you have to understand the animal. You have to know about what traits are good, what traits are bad. So definitely I would put that under animal experience.
Great. So another question, if a veterinarian allowed me to observe at a small animal clinic while I was in grammar school, does this count as experience? By grammar school, I'm assuming you mean like elementary, middle school.
No, the committee will think that you can't absorb that much. I mean, it might be you like animals and things like that, but unless you say this is in your goals that, this is what first interested me in veterinary medicine, you can say this is what interested me in veterinary medicine, but as an experience, no, that's something too long ago to be viable in actually what you're going to be doing. It can be what started you on your pathway to veterinary medicine, but as an experience, they're not gonna look at that.
Okay, great. If you gained experience through the same position, but we're working with multiple veterinarians at the same clinic, should it be entered as one or multiple experiences? Enter it as one. For your supervisor, you can pick the primary practice owner. You could pick the primary or the veterinarian that you worked with the most. That either one of those is fine, but please keep them as one thing. In the description, again, you can say, hey, this was a 5 veterinary practice. I got to work with each one of them to observe, different professional styles, whatever you want to say. But yes, keep it as one thing. Okay, I thought we went through. Yes, we do. Okay. If I have a rabbitry where I raise and breed show quality rabbits, absolutely that would count as animal experience. Yep. So that sort of a thing where you're showing an animal, where you're breeding, where it's something beyond, like my dog is chilling out here on the floor while I'm, doing an online webinar or, something like that. If it's above and beyond that, absolutely, that's good animal experience. Okay, we're going to get to community outreach, those sorts of things in just a minute, but I do want us to just chat, finish up our experience, our animal veterinary research experience discussion, and then tackle letters of recommendation. So I promise those are coming soon, but we're going to kind of hopefully move on here. One of the things that Kathy and I wanted to point out is to watch your hours. Like we had that question about still saying that we're employed, but taking a month off to shadow another veterinarian. That's good to be careful and kind of conservative or cognizant about that. Our admissions committee that will raise red flags if you have hours above and beyond what's maybe typical. So you'll see here some of these are actual quotes from our admissions committee about essay or experience hours in way previous years. So you can kind of see there, how is 8,700 hours accomplished in 11 months? So the last one, 20,000 hours more than they have been alive. So now possibly we added another 0, right? At the end, we did a typo or something like that. So double check that, first of all, but also, be realistic. So if you grew up on a family farm, or if you grew up around horses and you spent an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon with them, that makes sense. If you say, oh, I was, spent 40 hours a week with my horse, well, then the admissions committee thinks, okay, 40 hours a week with your horse, but then you also went to school, through high school. So you had to be in school at some point, you had to eat at some point, you had to do 4-H at some point, you had to sleep at some point. So be realistic and be kind of, and watch those hours, definitely.
This is one thing that, and I know other schools that say the same thing, this is one thing that can kill your application. And so, again, as Deanna said, be realistic. We had somebody that counted the hours for 9 years that she'd owned a dog 24 hours a day. As Deanna said, she's sitting there, her dog's chilling, she's not really working with her dog. So, and again, this is something committee members just don't like. Plus, if it's because you're making typos, they also worry about, and I've heard this several times, if you're going to be making calculations to give drugs, they don't want, to have you put a 0 on the end of something and give an animal, 10 times as much as what it was supposed to be given, things like that. So these are really red flags. And all you have to do is just double check. I also tell people, If you grew up on a farm, that's great. Again, start looking at how much time you spent from the time you were around 15, 16. Even if you think you did an awful lot at 8, 10, 12, use those hours. It sounds a lot more reasonable to our committee. And whether you have 10,000 hours doing something or 5,000, that does not really make a difference. But putting too many hours down, just again, double check everything, because this can really hurt your application.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's move on to letters of reference. There are a lot of questions I know in the Q&A box about those, so we will tackle those as we can. Just kind of our basics here. We do require, and in fact, VMCAS requires 3 letters of recommendation. 6 are accepted by our admissions committee. We will read up to 6. So I know that there was a question about if we submit more than 3, what type will you choose to review? We will review all of them. So that is, yeah, we don't kind of pick and choose. We will read as many as you submit. Kathy and I do recommend 4, mostly because it gives you a little cushion. So for example, you know, people get busy, people miss deadlines. It's not awesome that, you know, a professional reference would do that to you, but it happens. People get sick, people's computer crash. There's all sorts of different reasons why people can't get a letter of recommendation in on time. If you request 3 letters of recommendation and 1 person misses that deadline, your application is technically incomplete. So you sit out, you wait until next year to reapply. If you have 4 letters of recommendation and somebody misses that deadline, you still have the required 3. That 1 letter of recommendation is just, you know, in the wind. It's fine. So that's why Kathy and I recommend that you get 4 so that you do have that cushion. It is one of those things where it's just heartbreaking to have that happen. And, you know, I know students who, you know, really do a good job of, you know, reminding references, and they still submit them on September 15th. Hopefully they submit them, you know, on time, but, you know, it should represent a well-rounded view of the applicant. I know another question was about, like, who should we have? Do they all need to be from veterinarians? All of that. It can really, we have a 1 veterinarian recommendation. It is strongly recommended. On there, maybe it should be bolded and underlined and highlighted. So take that for what you will. It is not a requirement though, because like we, you know, talked about, if a veterinarian passes away, if your parent is a veterinarian and you've spent most of your experience hours with them, because those letters of recommendation cannot be from people related to you by blood or by marriage, you may not have one from a veterinarian. So it's strongly encouraged, but it is not a requirement. The other letters can be from anyone that you would like. We would like them to be, like I said, give us a well-rounded view of who you are, and that they should know you well. So, you know, if you have a state senator or the president of your university or whatever write us a letter of recommendation, unless they know you well and can speak to your qualities and your qualifications, we don't care. We would rather have someone who can actually, you know, let us know about who you are. So those are really our requirements. I know that a lot of other vet schools, you know, say you need an academic, you need a supervisor or an employer, you need a veterinarian. They have a laundry list of people who they are looking for a letter of recommendation from. That will work for us as well. So go by what they're asking for, and those will work for us. But again, it's more important to kind of have that good relationship. And it is okay to sit down, you know, schedule a Zoom meeting or a phone call. I used to say, you know, grab a cup of coffee with them, but I mean, you could socially distance, grab a cup of coffee with them. But then talk to them about why you want to go to vet school and what's important to you. And, you know, maybe some of the things that you hope that they'll, you know, that they've seen in you and might write about. It's okay to ask for a good or great or even outstanding letter of recommendation. And then if that recommender says, you know what, I don't feel comfortable, or maybe they say, I don't have time right now, something, that's okay. Because then that person may not have written you a good or great letter of recommendation. Find someone else. So just to kind of give you some examples, and then we'll take some questions here. When we talk about like, so yes, they should know you well. You should also know your letters or your recommenders well. So this is an example. We get this time and time again for a lot of, you know, really outstanding veterinary school applicants. This is a great letter. This is one where, you know, they are enthusiastic, right? They talk about this student's qualities. They, you know, recommend her for program. If maybe you don't ask for that good or great letter, or, you know, you aren't exactly sure that that person will write you a strong letter, you may end up with a letter being sent that looks more like this. So these are actual examples from applicants that we had, again, years in the past, but it does happen each year where we do get letters that look like this. So please know your recommenders well. So with that, let's go through some of the letters of recommendation questions. We talked about that already. Let's see. What is an appropriate time frame to give someone to complete a letter of recommendation? For example, or in other words, I work with 10 vets at the vet clinic I work at. I have a really good relationship with these vets, but haven't asked them for a letter yet. How long should I give them to complete these? So it depends, I guess. If you know them and you know that it will take a long time to get them to sit down and write that letter of recommendation, I would say as soon as possible. If you know that, hey, you know, right now is crazy, but, you know, the vet clinic usually tends to slow down as people start, you know, going back to work. Maybe it's better to give them an extended deadline, ask them now, but really start, you know, getting after them for that letter later on in August. You might know that, hey, if this person has a week to do it, they are going to sit down and do it. So maybe you give them a week. There's not really a perfect time. What I would say is you want to be able to have a good conversation with them. You could even ask them too, you know, hey, it's due in the fall, but, you know, if it helps you out, we can set a deadline that's earlier so that, you know, I can maybe submit earlier. They don't have to know that you can submit even without their letters. And, you know, talk to them about it, I guess, is the best thing. Kind of use what you know about them, talk to them about it. But yeah.
Deanna, I'd like to add one thing on because of what she said, that she works, or I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, works with 10 veterinarians. Do not get all 6 letters of recommendation from those vets, even though they may all know you very well. Pick 1 or 2, because chances are, unless they work with different species, each one of them, they're going to have very similar things to say about you. Pick the ones that you think would write the best letters, and only if they can speak to a different aspect, because again, taking the committee into account, they're reviewing a lot of evaluations. if everybody is going to be saying basically the same thing and showing like your characteristics in the same environment and your abilities in the same environment, you don't want to have all the same type of recommendations. That's where you'd want to branch out and maybe get one from another employer or an academic person, 4-H leader, just somebody different that can speak to different abilities. So just be careful that even though you work in a multi veterinarian practice, unless they can have seen you under different circumstances or different environments, you don't want to get only recommendations from them, because again, it gives only a one-sided picture of who you are.
Okay, Kathy, I'm sorry, I'm getting a call about my so Shannon has a question, and I marked that as I would like to answer it, and then also EJ, I'm down at the bottom. Do you mind covering those? I'm so sorry.
Yep, I will cover those. Shannon, regarding letters of recommendation, the office manager for the veterinarian writing my letter gave me her email for the submission. Is that allowed, or should I use? As long as the letter's coming from the veterinarian, it doesn't matter what email it comes from. I mean, that's fine. And the veterinarian needs to put down all their contact information. If there's something really fishy, one thing that our committee does is reserve the right to call people, because occasionally veterinarians can write things that just don't make sense. And so if they have a question about an evaluation, our committee will call the person who wrote it. So you don't need to worry about that at all. Just go ahead and use that email. Let's see.
Okay, great. You got both of those.
Okay, well, you can take over with Carrie Ann's. No, this one doesn't have EJ. Sorry.
EJ. Okay, perfect. So would a generic recommendation letter from a professor do more damage than good? Some schools require an academic reference, thus I am planning to submit one. However, I'm afraid it will hurt my application if other schools that don't require an academic letter, such as Iowa.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, we get recommendations from a generic one. A lot of times we do get for one reference. Some schools have basically a packet of references from their professors. We do accept that as one application. That's fine. If you're worried about it, add another reference. Like I said, we only require 3. So if you have 3 good references, that will be fine, unless the other 3, one is horrible. But a generic one won't make any difference if you have some other good recommendations with it.
Great. Okay. Perfect. We are going to move on a little bit to more kind of community service, leadership, honors, all of that kind of stuff, personal development, and move a little quickly so we can also hit up some essays. And then what we may do, Kathy, I don't know how you feel about this, but at 12:30, because I know I promised that we would kind of shift gears and talk a little bit more about the program. For those of you who want to know more about kind of our, teaching and who get, how many people get in, all of that kind of stuff, we'll kind of switch gears that way. And then maybe while I'm chatting, Kathy, you can type answers in, so you can stick around. Those of you who have an answer submitted or a question submitted, Kathy can start typing answers to those questions. You should be able to see all of the answered questions, even the typed ones in there as well. So I apologize that we're, going a little bit, or we're a little bit behind schedule here. But it's because you all have had excellent questions. So I appreciate it. I love answering your questions. I think that, for these 3 hours, that's really what it's all about, right? Is answering the questions that you want to know about. So anyway, I will keep on chatting, and Kathy, if you want to start typing, you can, and then we'll answer
Okay,
the leftover ones.
I'll answer the questions that are prior to these.
Perfect. Okay, so, or if you hit answer live, then we can, you know, like as you go through, if there's questions that we should answer for the whole group,
Okay.
yeah, you can hit answer live, and then we'll go through those ones. So, okay, so for community service, leadership, honors, all of that, again, for an activity, you know, like I see Amanda's here says, does being a scuba dive certified boost your experience as well? Yes, put that in as, you know, a kind of activity that would, you know, be classified under personal development. Absolutely. So these are things that kind of are outside. So extracurriculars tend to go in, you know, in these boxes. It does not have to be associated with a high school or a college, but, you know, anything that you do outside of the classroom that you think, you know, is kind of a skill that you've mastered, or something like that. We also look at that special circumstances or explanation statement in VMCAS. So this is a good place. Currently, it will be a lot of, you know, how COVID has impacted you should be in that explanation statement, but it's also a good place for you to address anything you feel didn't get addressed in any part of the application. So, you know, it may be a hardship that you experienced, whether in school or, you know, financial or something like that. If you talk about that, I think that that's, you know, fantastic. Or, you know, that's okay if you want to disclose that, but make sure that you kind of include a little bit about how you've recovered from that or how you're managing that. You know, talk about your resilience in spite of that, hardship. So it's okay to bring those things up. If you want the committee to know about that, fantastic. Put that in there. If not, that's okay as well. So that is just your spot where you say, hey, nowhere else on this application do I feel like I addressed something, or, you know, that I addressed this thing that I need the committee to know about. That's the place to do it. So, so honors, so like pre-vet certificate, any sort of certifications would go in that extracurricular area as well. Correct, Kathy?
I'm sorry, I'm typing in an
Sorry,
answer.
so certificates like the scuba diving instructor or like a pre-vet curriculum certificate, pet grooming certificate, those sorts of things.
I would put that under personal development, because it's someplace that you're getting, you're training in areas that aren't specifically a veterinary related area.
Mm-hmm.
So even the groomer or things like that, I'd still put that in personal development.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
But if they've earned their certificate, I'm assuming they're doing it. So
yeah,
you know, then it can be experience if they're actually doing something with that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
With that certificate. But the scuba diving definitely would be personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to put in the description, you know, how it relates, I don't know, maybe they're doing things with marine mammals or something like that. So scuba diving may actually be related to the animal experience. So I would still put that in personal development.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. So do you, are you all set to go?
Give me another 50 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So, let's talk a little, let's switch gears, talk a little bit about essays. Sorry, I know I'm missing some of the questions in there, but we'll either type questions or we'll chat about them. as we have time to as well. So I wanted to talk about essays. You'll see the essay questions from VimCast here. You do have a, oh, sorry, Mary, going back to the explanation statement, it is not required. There are absolutely instances where a student would not fill this out. You know, it is essentially up to you. If there's something you want to disclose, go for it. If there's not, that's totally fine as well. I would say the kind of, I don't, Kathy, maybe this is overstepping, but for the explanation statement, I would say more explanation statements are left blank than are filled in.
Correct.
So the explanation statement is more for, you know, that kind of extenuating circumstance you want us to know about that doesn't fit anywhere else. But again, I would say more often than not, it's left blank because students feel like they've addressed, you know, experiences and all of that in another part of the essay. It's not looked down upon if it's blank or if it's filled in. Either way is perfectly fine. That's a neutral.
The one thing I advise people not to use it for is this: I got a C in organic chemistry the first time around because of whatever reason, you know, and I retook the course, and this is the reason I retook. No, you need to use it for something that's a little more serious than that. Again, repeating courses and things like that is not unusual. We're talking about real hardship. You know, things that really did impact your life at a certain time, and it wouldn't just be your organic chemistry course, things like that. But we do have people that use it for that, but I suggest you don't use it for that.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's kind of circle back to the essays. You've got the essays here. We know they're 2,000 characters a piece. We also have that additional essay question right here that you have 1,300 characters for. And like I said, if you're a Nebraska resident, you'll answer 2 additional essay questions. If you're interested in that DVM MBA, you'll have another question. If neither of those apply to you, you shouldn't now even see those questions at all. So the one question everybody will answer is that supplemental application question. Here's a little bit about, this is essentially what those 2,000 characters will look like. Things to kind of consider. Obviously, you want to use your space wisely. You don't have a ton of space to kind of ramble on. You want to be succinct. And, you know, you want to essentially answer the question. That's the biggest thing to think about, is to answer that question. It's perfectly okay to write it in Word first. However, because of formatting issues, sometimes what you copy and paste in a certain word processing, you know, program may alter or may have different character count. So reread your essay once you've posted it in VimCast so you know that it didn't cut off part of the last sentence or anything like that. Things to consider. Please proofread. Have a couple other people proofread your essays. So one person who is a grammar expert. I think of my sister who spent, I think 10 years as an English teacher. If I were applying to vet school, she would be the person I would have review my essay for grammar. Also have someone who knows you very well and can let you know, hey, you forgot this one experience, or, you know, you've always talked to me about wanting to, you know, work in this area or something like that. So have someone who knows you well, who can kind of help you with not write the essay for you, but give you pointers on the content that you're writing. Please, 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 please know the difference between veterinary, which is a describing word, and veterinarian, which is a person. Autocorrect doesn't catch that. And our admissions committee loves to catch that. So please know the difference between veterinary and veterinarian. So that is something, and honestly, I would say any of that autocorrect a lot of times doesn't catch, you know, different forms of you, your, or their, you know, those sorts of things. You want to make sure that you're catching those, and that your reviewer can catch those. Be realistic with your career goals. If you would like to have a, you know, free clinic, or be able to give some of your services away for free, that is amazing and awesome. If you are like the typical veterinary graduate who has, I think right now the average is $150,000-ish in student loan debt, probably you're not going to give all of your services away for free. You will have to figure out how you're paying back those student loans. Talk about that in your career goals. If you want to do some fantastic, you know, philanthropic things, great. Just be realistic and be like, I know I'm going to have to earn money, and this is how I'm going to, you know, plan on doing that. Also be realistic with the number of, you know, number of jobs in a given career field. So I think of, you know, zoo medicine, fantastic career to be in, a little tricky to kind of get your foot in the door. So what are you going to do kind of in the meantime before you get that job at that fantastic zoo? So things to kind of think about, being realistic about those career goals. So back up, use examples, use evidence, right, to back up what you're saying. So if you're talking about, you know, how you know, really love that dairy, you know, dairy cattle medicine, and you want to do that, hey, it's because I spent, you know, X number of years working with a dairy veterinarian, and you know, here's what I've learned from that. You do not have to recount your experiences, but if you reference them, or if you kind of like, you know, mention them, the admissions committee can go back and be like, oh yeah, they did this experience, and this is what some of the things they did. This is how long they were there, so they can kind of go back to your experiences as a reference for that. Be professional, not creative. So, and I shouldn't say you can be creative, you should let your personality show. However, remember that you're applying and you're writing for a professional program. And so you want to keep that in mind as you're writing. So it's okay to say, hey, you know, this one event in my life sparked my interest in a veterinarian. As I grew up, here is how I made the mature decision to become a veterinarian through my experience, or whatever that looks like. That is different from saying, one dark and rainy night, my cat got hit by a car and we rushed them to the veterinary clinic, and the veterinary clinic heroically, or the veterinarian heroically, you know, saved them. That's creative writing, right? Which is great if that's your passion. Keep in mind though, you are writing to enter a professional program. So that's what I will say about that. So that's kind of the essays in a nutshell. If you have, well, we can kind of clarify, let's see, can I pick out a couple of essay things too? I know Kathy's been typing them. I'm looking at Alexandra's question down at the bottom that says, in the career goal essay, should we prioritize why we reached the career goals we have, or how we plan to achieve those? I'd say you can do a little bit of both. I would say more though, why you've reached that career goal. That's the question, right? Is why what are your career goals and why? So you want to say my career goal is XYZ. I've had, you know, I've come to that decision in this way. But yeah, Kathy.
The one thing is, though, again, we were talking about being realistic. If you have what I consider a not bad career goal, but a grand career goal, such as I want to, you know, I'm going to be a small animal practitioner and want to be able to provide service to the homeless so they can keep their pets, or provide low cost or no cost spay, neuter programs, things like that. We get a lot of that. That's a great goal, and there are veterinarians out there doing it. It is not something that a just graduated veterinarian with $150,000 in debt is going to be able to go out and do. If you have that realistic goal, then tell them how it is important that you tell them how you are going to achieve that. Just a quick example is we did have probably one of the best career goals things I've seen. This student, their goal was to create a foundation. Her goal was be a small animal practitioner, but to create a foundation in, I think it was the Detroit area, that would be able to, again, she would be part of it, but be able to help, again, give free spays and neuters, help the homeless in the area be able to keep their pets, things like that. She had a whole business plan, didn't tell us the whole thing, but she had a whole business plan as to how she was going to get there and the amount of time it was going to take her. So if you do have a great goal like that, tell them how you're going to get there. The other thing we see a lot of is people that want to work in zoos, some type of exotic animal area. That's great. People make, a lot of people have that goal. Many people make it. But talk to them about how you're going to get there, because chances are there are so few actual jobs in that area that you may not, you're not going to come out of vet school and hop right into being a veterinarian for the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. So you have to tell people what your plan is to get there. There's nothing wrong with the goals. They're great. And I applaud everybody that has these specific goals in mind, but be realistic that you're not going to come out of vet school and get right into your perfect job. And so tell people how you plan to get there. People say, well, this is what I plan to do first as I continue to gain experience here, there, whatever. Just make sure that you have a way of getting there and that your idea is really great, but you don't have any idea of, what it's going to take to get to that area.
Perfect. Do you want to answer? I've just got to
That's fine.
get with this guy real quick.
Okay.
So do you mind the first question, Amanda's question? Do you mind tackling that?
I can go for that. I can.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Amanda says, if we are reapplying, do you recommend rewriting all essays, even if you were extremely confident in them? I recommend rewriting them, yes. I recommend that you sit down not looking at your previous application and just rewriting them. After you've rewritten them, including anything new within your, within your essays in the way of experience and things like that, and then go back. Even if you're extremely confident in them, chances with us right now that you'll get the same reviewers is highly unlikely. However, in other schools, you may get the same reviewers. If you're applying to our Nebraska 2+2 program, the entire committee reads your application. So they would be seeing your application twice. If you don't rewrite them, you can have all the same, you just don't want them word for word, because that shows, even though you're really confident in them, I don't want to take the time to rewrite them. And so depending upon the school, like I say, for us right now, we have a rather large committee. Chances of somebody getting the same application twice are low, but everything is randomly assigned by a computer, so it is still possible. It probably won't happen. However, in other schools, it may. So I would just sit down, write something up again, and then combine the two. Just because again, the thing is, they want to see people that are highly motivated to get into vet school. And by using your same word for word essays, if somebody catches on to that, it will hurt your essay or your application. Let me see. We went through, I'm going to answer this one. Megan asked about what are some examples that can be entered as extracurricular activities. Do sports and volunteer activities work? Do we have to relate them back to veterinary medicine? No, this is another place that people think everything has to focus on animals or veterinary medicine. No, we're looking for anything, any extracurricular activity. It doesn't have to be related to the school. It can be, you work with the Kiwanis Club in your community. It may be your church. You may volunteer with some specific groups within your community. Those are all extracurricular activities. So those are what we want. We don't want just things related to veterinary medicine or animals, or just related to the school. It can be, it is sports, volunteer activities, anything you do with, you know, in a group within your community. So it does not need to be specific to veterinary medicine, and can be anything, basically anything that you do outside of school work. Let's see.
I'm back.
Oh, okay. I answered two.
Okay, great. Perfect.
I answered Amanda's, and I already clicked the other one away.
Okay, great.
Which
Sounds
was
good.
about extracurricular activities.
Let's see. Kimberly asks, how should I go about the assets essay question? Should it be a list of assets we think a veterinarian should have, or should we focus on the one or two that we also possess? I would definitely, you want to back up the ones you believe you possess. You know, you could list a good number. I would say list some that you think are most important, but remember you only have 2,000 characters. So you don't need a whole list of 20 assets when really what they're asking for is do you understand the veterinary profession and what it takes to be a veterinarian, and those assets that you believe that they have. And then honestly, the essays are all about you, right? So you want to make sure that you're backing up the ones you're talking yourself up, essentially, right? You're saying, hey, I know it takes good communication, and I know it takes patience to be a veterinarian. Not patience like, well, you do need actual animal patience, but you also need like patience. So here's how I've demonstrated those. This is why I'm awesome at being patient and having good communication skills, right? So yes, you want to be able to it's a little bit of both and, I guess, is what I would say. You want to show that you understand the veterinary profession by listing those assets, but you also want to take the space to say, and this is why I'm going to make a great veterinarian, because I have these assets or these, qualities, and this is how I've shown that. So a little bit of both and there. Okay, great. We are going to have, I'm so sorry we're running so late, but here's what we're going to do, if it's okay. We will go up until we can't go anymore for some of the things that I've got a couple more slides for some general tips. Kathy, I think we'll keep on typing, and then whenever we can transition into program materials, I will let you know so that if you do need to duck off, you can. If you would like to stick around, you're welcome to. And then what I will say is we will have, Kathy and I will kind of do plan a couple more webinars before the application deadline so that you can get more information too. So be on the lookout for that. But here's just some general tips for you. I've got a couple of things for general tips. I'm going to kind of get up on my little soapbox here and go through those for you. So please, these are things that you can do that we see we see from students who have an unsuccessful application in a cycle. So they may look like, yes, of course, yes, of course you want to read all the instructions thoroughly. Yes, of course you want to proofread all of those things, but these are literal things that can knock an application out. So read all instructions thoroughly, whether that's from VMCAS, whether that's on your supplemental application, especially read instructions that you get on your message board through the supplemental application thoroughly. Please proofread. When you get ready to hit submit, go through your application page by page, print it off. There's a way to print it off in PDF format. Go through it, proofread it one last time. It's amazing. And VMCAS has been trying to, edit some of these things so that it's a little bit harder for people to, kind of make some of these errors. But it's still, easy to say, okay, I've written the essays, right? They're in Word, I've written the essays. And when you get to the essay portion, it still says like insert essay here or something like that. So proofread, just make sure you've filled everything out that you need to fill out, that, you've literally, well, not literally because you're on a computer, but you've crossed all your T's, dotted all of your I's, right? Read through it one more time. Be concise and realistic, especially things like, descriptions for experiences and awards and honors and stuff like that. It's okay to be concise, so that you can, one, fit in all of those, job duties and everything that you've done. Like I saw a question there about like using I in those, experience explanation statements, maybe, or explanations, maybe Kathy typed
I typed an answer to that.
Answer. Okay.
It's fine. It's fine to use personal pronouns.
Yeah. But you can also be concise with that, so try and answer the questions and put down the appropriate and important material, and leave all the flowery stuff. As I talk about, like that, and I've gone way over our time, but I want to get you this good information. So be concise, be realistic, communicate. If you have questions, communicate with VMCAS, communicate with Kathy and her admissions team. Communicate with your evaluators. If it's coming up to that deadline and you haven't heard from them, reach out to them. It's better that, and then you can maybe get a backup evaluator versus, not having enough evaluators, right? Communicate with your institutions, your education institutions that owe you transcripts. If you, if it's getting close to the deadline and you still haven't seen, XYZ transcript come in, get on the phone with somebody in the registrar or in, the registrar's office or wherever, your transcripts are coming from. Communicate with them. This is your future career. No pressure, but it's your future career. VMCAS has a lot of applicants, right, to deal with. Kathy and I have a lot of pre-vet students we're dealing with. Your evaluators have a lot of other kind of job descriptions, right, or kind of hats that they wear. Your undergraduate institution has a lot of different students that they're dealing with. You are your best advocate. Talk to people. Get the stuff in that you need to get in. There's my soapbox. Sorry. I'll get off it. Well, no, I won't get off it. I'm not ready to yet. But talk with people. Be out there. Be in front of people when you need something, whether it's a question answered or an evaluation turned in or whatever. We already kind of talked about double check that your application is complete, double check the message board as well. So everybody wants to know, like, how do you get into vet school? Here are some things that we look at, you know, despite our, you know, on top of grades and experience hours and, you know, kind of all of that stuff that we put on paper, but really what the qualities we're looking for. We want you to have an understanding and be able to show an understanding of the profession. So, you know, we want you to be able to write about it, to, you know, show that you've, you know, experienced it, all of that kind of stuff, but have an understanding of the profession. It's, I think, interesting, or it's, you know, one of those things, it's a reality that students come to me, especially when they're in the start of their pre-vet journey, and they have that mentality of like, I want to be a veterinarian because I love animals. There are a lot of professions where you can love animals and get to work with animals every day that don't require a professional program. So understand why you want to be a veterinarian. What about the medical profession, you know, kind of interests you? Well, I can't promise you because I'm not at a med school, you know, working in admissions, but I can pretty much bet you that no entry essay or application essay for med school starts out with, I have always loved humans, right? It's a little bit different. They're looking, our admissions committee is looking for, what do you understand about that, the profession that you're hoping to be a part of? Be well-rounded. And show that well-roundedness. So like the scuba folks, right? Awesome. If you know, are interested and you see, you know, we see that you have that large animal, small animal, you know, equine, all of that experience, that well-roundedness. If you, you know, kind of go outside of your comfort zone in that way. So demonstrate well-roundedness, give back to your community and hone those leadership skills. Those things that if you can kind of show that on your application, those things go a long way. Volunteerism and leadership go a long way. And then recognize the importance of lifelong learning. The veterinary medical profession changes a lot and quickly sometimes. So, you know, it's one of those things that you will always be learning about your profession. And if you can recognize that, I think that that will help out a lot as well. So, great. I think that I will take a minute and step off my soapbox there. I think Kathy is still, it looks like the questions keep
typing away.
The count keeps going down. I do want to answer this question posed by Cameron here. I feel my grades aren't, and people upvoted it too. I feel like my grades are decent, but they're not great. I have a ton of experience. I have great letters of recommendation. I'm involved in a lot of things in my community. Obviously, grades are important, but how bad is this going to hurt my chances of getting accepted? Like I said, we're looking for well-roundedness. So if your grades are decent, well, okay, so I think sometimes pre-vet students' view of decent grades is different than other people's view of decent grades. When I was in undergrad, like B's with maybe a couple C's are decent grades. Sometimes veterinary student or pre-veterinary students think like B's, you know, or like mostly B's with some A's is like decent grades. Those are great grades. So depends on your, you know, kind of definition of decent. But there's a reason why 50% of your overall score comes from everything outside of the classroom. So I think that a person with decent grades and, you know, like you said, excellent letters of recommendation and all of that still have a chance. Really, it depends on whether you're above that, you know, GPA cutoff. So if you can calculate your required science score, and you feel pretty good about that required science score being, hovering around a 3.0 or maybe above, you probably have a decent chance to, at least for the committee, to see those, other things that you've done. So obviously there's no guarantee. Our applicant pool changes every single year, so it's hard to say. But you may have a great chance of getting admitted. That's the one thing I do not envy you about applying to vet school, is that, there isn't an exact formula for getting into vet school. We said that at the beginning, but it's true. It's very, very true. We have students who have a 4.0 and don't get into vet school because they haven't left the classroom or the library. We have students who have a 3.0 or a 2.8 and get into vet school because they have, all of those other things that are backing them up. So our committee has the unenviable task of trying to figure out who is going to make a great veterinary student, but also a great veterinarian. That's a hard task. So I'm sorry, I wish I could be like, oh, Cameron, don't worry about it. Or, oh, Cameron, retake classes or something. But it's just, there's no one path to vet school. So that's what I've got. Great. So a couple of cleanup things here, Kathy, that I'm seeing that I think would be good for the whole group. When will acceptance offers be given? Those will be given on February 15th. You'll know whether you've been around February 15th.
Yeah.
You'll know whether you've been admitted, you've been placed on our alternate list, or your application has been declined. You'll know those three things around February 15th. And then, is it a detriment if you don't have large animal experience? When?
I want to answer. I just wanted to let you know, there's one question I started typing and I'm thinking I want to send it. I want to answer it live.
Okay, perfect. Is it a detriment if I don't have large animal experience? No. I mean, if you want to be a large animal vet, then yes. Yeah. But if you don't want to be a large animal vet, that's totally fine. We do a fairly good job in our academic program of kind of leveling the playing field for students who maybe have zero large animal experience. We're going to get you that experience. For people who have zero small animal experience, we're going to get you that experience too. So not a detriment unless, your experience doesn't match your career goals.
I want to chime in. This question goes to what you're talking about. There's no one way to get into vet school. This is, what is the committee's opinion on fear-free shelter certification? Is this something worth completing? We are never going to tell you whether something is worth doing or not. If you are truly interested in it, it's definitely worth doing. It would be, for this, it would be something I'd put down if I had completed it. However, if you're doing something strictly because you think it will get you into vet school, I will guarantee you it will not. So it has to be based on, I'm kind of on the same soapbox. If you are interested in it, great, go for it. If you think you're only doing it because it will get me into vet school, it won't, because that's not a reason for doing this. The reason is that you have to want information, just like graduate programs. Should I go for a graduate degree? Yes, if you're really interested. But if you think by doing that you'll get into vet school, no, if that's the only reason you're completing it. So if it's something you're interested in with this fear-free shelter certification, if that's something that you think is important, go for it, do it, put it down. But I don't think it'll make or break your application into getting into vet school. So I wanted to kind of go join with you in the thing that we had, in the idea that there's no way, there's nothing we can say to say, do this, this, and this, and you'll get into vet school. It doesn't happen.
It really is all about what's important to you. Absolutely. Yep. So then this last question here, are applications reviewed as they are received? They'll, yes, but it doesn't mean that that person gets priority in like our admissions decisions. If you apply early, that means that Kathy and her team can start the academic review early. It spreads out the bulk of those applications to do that academic review. And then, that may get passed on to the academic or the admissions committee early, but it does not mean they do not make admissions decisions until all applications have been reviewed.
And just to point out that people have to remember, okay, at the beginning we're working, I think we've got 18 verified and we're going through them as we get them. Come about August 15th, we will start being inundated. And at that point, no, they're probably not done as they are received because we have so many of them. People have to actually give us time. And like we will probably get several hundred the very last day. So people will need to give us a chance to get to all those. Right now, yes, as they come in, we're doing them. As we start getting overloaded with them, and none of us, this admissions is not our only job in our office. So yes, as we get a lot, no, they are probably not done in the way they are received.
Okay, perfect. So at this time, I think, Kathy, there's a few questions like up towards the top that are more kind of procedural questions for you. Okay. And then what we're going to do at this time is to kind of switch over to a little bit of program information. So for those of you who are with us still, thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us this morning / this afternoon, depending on your time zone. I appreciate your questions. We appreciate being able to help give you some guidance. Like I said, this will be recorded or is being recorded and will be on YouTube later on this week. We are happy to answer any questions that you have. If you took down our email addresses before, otherwise, if you look at our screen, they should be the I don't know if you can see our names, but anyway, if you reply to the invite that you got to attend this session with your questions, I'll make sure if they are more relevant for Kathy's department, she gets those, or I'll answer you if you have follow-up questions. So thank you. I appreciate you coming. I will stay on, hang out for about 20 minutes and chat through a little bit of our, our class size, our program, and those sorts of things. As of now, as a way of parting, I do want to say that Brooke's question about when can you come and visit the campus is still unknown. I apologize. I wish I could say, yes, now, come on, but we're not sure. At this point, our students, only our veterinary students are back. Our fourth year students are back. No clients are allowed in the clinic. No visitors are allowed on campus without kind of essential functions. At this time, I'm not sure. We will, however, there's a little bit of construction going on in the college, which is really exciting. Once that kind of wraps up, we will be posting another Facebook Live tour so that you can get to know some of our students and kind of get to know the facility that way. So we'll do like a virtual Facebook Live tour. It probably will be after the fall semester starts up. But I apologize that I can't welcome you here. And then, so kind of along with that, Kristen, Currently, we are, our classes will be held kind of in a hybrid, mostly in-person classes, especially the labs where our students are doing that hands-on learning will be in person. So it will look different, but we are planning on welcoming students in the fall, even in light of COVID, with obviously some really good protective measures in place. So thank you for that question. Thank you for coming. Like I said,